As dome scandals go, the Teapot one back in 1923, well, it's been the lonely example of corruption and greed at the highest government levels. Well, move over, Teapot Dome, because Trump's Golden Dome may well outscandal you, and that is our top story today. While President Harding, what a guy, presided over the Teapot Dome scandal, Trump and Musk are unveiling a space-based defense system. It is even more ripe for graft and corruption and fraud and abuse. Well, here's a quick history lesson, and the parallels, wait till you see them, they become clear. Here's the old dome scandal and the new potential dome scandal. Our featured stories on the other side of this.
Think Watergate was the first big political scandal in U.S. history? Think again. Because almost 50 years earlier, news broke about dirty dealings at the top of government that resulted in jail time for one cabinet member. At a time when U.S. industry was largely powered by coal, which could be expensive to mine and transport, the discovery of crude oil by Pennsylvanian businessman Edwin Drake in 1859 changed the energy game forever. Nicknamed Black Gold, oil could be easily converted to gasoline and electricity. New forms of energy that would kickstart the second industrial revolution. In the years that followed, it wasn't just business that was interested in oil. The U.S. Navy was too, having updated its coal-powered ships to oil power. President William Howard Taft agreed to set aside some oil reserves for the Navy's emergency use, including one in Wyoming with a rock formation that looked like a teapot, Teapot Rock, otherwise known as Teapot Dome. When President Warren G. Harding took office, things started to get a little murky. Harding's Secretary of the Interior, Albert Fall, convinced the President and then Secretary of the Navy to transfer control of the naval oil reserves to his department. But instead of a competitive bidding process, he secretly accepted bribes to lease the land. Almost $7 million in today's money, from private oil barons calling them loans. It wasn't long before local workers noticed something was amiss, and after the press broke the story, Fall resigned from office and was tried by the Senate for accepting bribes. All the fraudulent leases were returned to the Navy, and Fall was later convicted and sentenced to 1 year in prison, becoming the first cabinet member to serve time behind bars. The Teapot Dome scandal stunned the American public by exposing the large-scale greed of some U.S. politicians. It also empowered Congress to launch investigations when the law may have been violated by government officials, reaffirming that no one is above the law. How can the government best prevent politicians from abusing their power?
Isn't that fascinating? So now let's cut to the present president.
When you first announced this idea, critics said it would be prohibitively expensive, potentially ineffective, and could trigger an arms race in space. What do you say to those critics about that?
Well, they're wrong. It's about as close to perfect as you can have in terms of real production. I told you Canada wants to be a part of it, which be, fairly small expansion, but we'll work with them on pricing. We'll be dealing with them on pricing. They know about it very much. They've asked to be a part of it, actually. They've asked us to be a part of it. I think it's something that is great. If you can afford to do it, we can afford to do it. We took in $5.1 trillion in the last 4 days in the Middle East. And when you think about it, this is a tiny fraction of that. But we make it all here. We're going to make it all here. We have, I will tell you, an adversary told me, a very big adversary told me the most brilliant people in the world are Silicon Valley.
And that brings us to our top story today. The Independent reported just this morning. Furious Democrats call for an investigation into Musk's bid to help build Trump's $500 billion Golden Dome project. A group of 42 Democrats has written the Pentagon Inspector General demanding an investigation after it was reported that Elon Musk's company, SpaceX, could win a lucrative contract to help build President Donald Trump's new Golden Dome anti-missile defense system. Senators Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, and Tammy Duckworth have responded by expressing their concerns in a letter to Acting Pentagon Inspector General Stephen A. Stebbins, demanding transparency about the bidding process. Mr. Musk's formal or informal participation in any process to award a government contract raises serious conflict of interest concerns, including the possibility that SpaceX is a top contender for the Golden Dome contract because of Mr. Musk's position in the government. That's what they wrote. The project, inspired by Israel's Iron Dome, was announced by President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth at the White House on Tuesday. The former promised it would be fully operational before he leaves office in January 2029. Oh my God, and capable of intercepting rockets even if they are launched from space. The independent Congressional Budget Office has warned that the project could cost as much as $524 billion and take 20 years to build. Trump dismissed that estimate, putting the price tag closer to $175 billion and insisting it could be completed in just 3 years, beginning with a $25 billion grant to kickstart the development. That effort will be steered by Space Force General Michael Gutlein and the brightest minds in Silicon Valley. He said, without naming the former Doge leader. According to CNN, the billionaire who donated $288 million to the Republican election campaign last year has lobbied Hegseth for a role in the project. SpaceX is reportedly pitching to win the contract to shape the dome's custody layer, a constellation of satellites that would detect missiles, track their trajectory, and determine if they are heading towards the U.S. Sources told Reuters that Musk's company has estimated that the preliminary engineering and design work for the custody layer would cost between $6 billion and $10 billion. That's a lot of money. The Pentagon has warned for years that the newest missiles deployed by China and Russia are so advanced that the updated countermeasures are necessary. Golden Dome's added satellites and interceptors, where the bulk of the program's costs lie, would be focused on stopping those advanced missiles early on or in the middle of their flight. The space-based weapons envisioned for Golden Dome represent new and emerging requirements for missions that have never before been accomplished by military space organizations. General Chance Saltzman, head of the U.S. Space Force, told lawmakers at a hearing Tuesday, China and Russia have put offensive weapons in space, such as satellites with the ability to disable critical American satellites, which can leave the U.S. vulnerable to attack. Last year, the U.S. said Russia was developing a space-based nuclear weapon that could loiter in space for long durations, then release a burst that would take out satellites around it. Trump told reporters in the Oval Office that he had not yet spoken to Russian President Vladimir Putin about the new program, but would do so at the right time. In a joint statement earlier this month, China and Russia called the Golden Dome deeply destabilizing in nature, warning that it would turn outer space into an environment for placing weapons and an arena for armed confrontation. No money has been set aside for the project yet, and overall it is still in the conceptual phase. Newly confirmed Air Force Secretary Troy Minnick told senators on Tuesday the U.S. already has many satellite defense capabilities, such as the Patriot missile, batteries it provides to Ukraine to defend against incoming missiles, and an array of satellites in orbit to detect missile launches. Some of those existing systems will be incorporated into Golden Dome. In an executive order signed on January 27th during the first week of his presidency, Trump directed the Pentagon to pursue space-based interceptors. Yeah, Reagan wanted it. Trump thinks that he's going to get it. But a view from the moon would tell us what Shakespeare said as well. Jagger, you know this. If we pollute the skies above and wreak havoc below, to quote the old bard, then the fault, dear Donald, is not in our satellites, but in ourselves.